Welcome to the Whiteboard Series of MSP Insider Show, where we actually take some of the gold nuggets that our guests are dropping on the show and we really break them down that much further so that it becomes this transferable knowledge, right? It's great to be entertained. It's great to have a wonderful hour spent with a guest like we have. But out of all the content they drop, oftentimes I get questions like, hey, go a little bit deeper here, or maybe they'll turn a light bulb on for me. And so I decide, that's such a good idea. I really want to unpack that a little bit further. And as you all have come to know with me, the whiteboard is the place where I do that best. And so in this episode, we are actually going to break down one of the concepts out of the David Powell episode. And in my episode, which you can find on the channel, he actually talked about this concept of humans in the age of AI, specifically for MSPs, that humans actually represent the last mile. And so what I want to do is break down that concept even further and leave you with a real visual framework and mindset and understanding of how to begin to make that transition. Specifically, when I was talking with David, I said, how do we take that MSP owner who knows they want and need to adopt AI into their business, but they really just don't know where to start. They don't know where to begin. They don't know how to get off the X. And then his answer is really the spirit of what the session will be on. And so let's dive into this concept that David Powell mentioned, and I'm going to unpack it for you here on the whiteboard. And hopefully that makes it stick and that much more tangible and that much more real for you. So first, I want to talk to you about this concept that he had, right? Because maybe you haven't seen the show, and that's okay. The concept was that AI is changing so much and so fast how MSPs need to think about service delivery. And he called it this concept of the last mile. And he wasn't talking about, internet connectivity. He wasn't talking about, something along those lines, but he wanted to take the concept that we would understand, which was the last mile, and use it to describe and depict ultimately human judgment and expertise in the AI age, and why that matters so much, and why you shouldn't be nervous or scared about it, and why you should embrace it fully. So when we get into this lesson that he was teaching, he wanted to make sure that you understood, like, MSP service delivery is fundamentally changing. It's not about replacing the humans, though. It's actually about empowering them to do the things that are uniquely us, human, that can't be replaced by the machine. So think of AI as the tool that handles the routine tasks and the repetitive things. And ultimately, we can cut out that base layer and free your team up to do the meaningful work, right? Solving those complex problems, building relationships with your clients, and really working through what he calls this last mile. And so as we look at it, and we really try to figure out, okay, where and how do we apply the concept of AI in our reality? So first things first, you cannot automate what you cannot replicate. So his first concept was really that you really need to understand the processes that exist in your business first and get those documented. And that's going to be things like creation of a new password, or how to make the ticket, or how to do all your automated alerting, like all those things, right? You need to end up having the process, and all of the stuff on this left-hand side, that's really where you can begin with AI in your business. But it also begins with the foundation of process to begin with too, right? Like, you can't automate what you can't replicate. Like, you need to really understand that first. And trust me, as a former MSP, the process was in my head in most cases. The process was in my people's head, the tribal knowledge piece. Like, there was the process, but then there was the way we actually did it, right? So you do have to deduce that logic, that reasoning, that intelligence down to a piece of paper so that you can really empower your people over here, which is what we're talking about as the last mile of work, right? Like the part where we need to do the human connection stuff. And that's ultimately what this is about. Like the MSP that can focus more on the people and the service and the experience and how we make people feel in the process of working with our businesses are the ones that are going to win it out. So AI can process information, right? It can suggest actions. It can do all of these things, but what it cannot do, which is why it also exists like that, right? Like, what it cannot do is it cannot replicate human discernment, which was his point. The ability to read between the lines, the ability to understand context, the ability to make nuanced decisions based on all those things that are uniquely human about the dynamics of the relationships, or the VIP or the not VIP, or they're related to this person, they're not. Like, there's so much of that stuff that the AI piece isn't going to break down, right? So let's move into, his real world example. His real world example, he was talking about DoorDash as one example to carry this relatable last mile into our reality. So imagine that you're booking a dinner reservation, and an AI, it can find the highest rated restaurant in your area, right? it can even go as far as to making the booking, especially with the release of OpenAI's operator, right? But what it can't do, it cannot understand your wife, your husband, your partner, or your friend, right? Like, they can't understand what they prefer. Do they prefer a lively atmosphere? Do they prefer a dive bar experience? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Or do they want like the candlelit dinner, right? Do they want a more formal dining experience? That's what human discernment is and looks like when it's at work. So in terms of MSPs, right, like AI can handle password resets and monitoring the systems and like reading logs and maybe more commonly drafting communication, right? But when it comes to understanding why a client might be, like why their frustration level seems unusually high, or why a particular solution may not fit for this particular company culture, that is where your team's expertise becomes completely invaluable. Like, that's the differentiator. That's where we're going to separate ourselves from the competition. And we're going to do so by enabling and empowering our people to spend their time on the areas of the experience that have to do with the human discernment piece. So how can we really break this down and like put it into practice, right? So the first thing I want to do is break down like the details of the concept, and then you can essentially construct this as a pyramid when you're done. But I think it's more important to have it show up this way in your minds first, right? So if the 3-step framework that David left behind to really think through this is broken down a little bit further here. So the first thing he talked about is that really there's this foundational layer. And inside the foundational layer was where he was talking about like the things that are really kind of able and capable and like doable right now with certain platforms that are out there for MSPs. Things like password resets can be automated, right? Basic system monitoring, I mentioned that. Even creating or standardizing update procedures or SOPs or something, like even that stuff can be automated, right? But ultimately we're talking about streamlining tasks. And if it isn't streamlining tasks, then there might be other things where we can do like reducing human error. What's an example of that? How about punctuation, grammar, communication, right? If AI could actually draft the client updates in a hospitality tone rather than broken, tech, gruff, abrasive tone, then the way it's going to make the person feel when they receive that is far better than anything else, right? So like breaking those things down ultimately kind of drives operational efficiency, which is what we're going for, because it can take the load, the mental load and the physical load, the admin barrier, off of your people as they're just kind of going through the motions or going through the process. And the next layer then is to what we call the augmentation layer. Augmentation layer, right? So like as we do all these other things on the left-hand side, now we're starting to be able to get to the point where we're in the augmentation layer, right? So now we're talking about things more like ticket classification, right? Ticket classification is an easy one. What about initial problem diagnosis, right? So like that's more than just triage, although that's possible too. It's like a diagnosis. How can we give our level ones an extra hand, like a superpower, a second brain, to be able to know how to solve things that they don't have the context window yet or the experience to be able to just draft initially? And then the last part is like communication drafts. I gotta find a better way to hold this iPad so I can actually write like not a child. But anyways, you understand the point. Communication drafts, right? Like, but the human still reads the drafts like, I need to say it differently. I want to put it this way. I want to do that thing. And then the last category of the framework was to create the human excellence layer. Human excellence. And when he was talking about this is where he was really leaning really far into the human discernment portion, right? Like the things that absolutely cannot today be replicated or replaced or instilled or installed or reasoned through as it relates to our unique ability as humans to deliver on the human experience, right? So in some cases, some examples here was strategic planning. Going through that, it was the ultimate human expertise. So like the nuance we talked about before, reading between the lines, knowing the interpersonal relationships and how that all interacts and goes, right? Complex problem solving. Oof, there you go. Relationship building is probably another big one, right? Business impact discussions, right? I mean, AI can be used to try to map some of that out and war game it, but like ultimately when it comes to the communication and the face-to-face meeting you need to have with the customer on that really tough thing, then that's up to you and the human discernment piece, right? And this is all to say, how and where can MSPs start to integrate with AI? Through this concept, through this model of the interaction between these three things, you need to start leveling up your people by stripping away the things that can be automated. But remember, you cannot automate what you cannot replicate and duplicate, right? So you need to dial in your processes first, because if you don't, then you're just going to end up doing a lot more of the wrong things faster, and that isn't going to get you to where you're going to want to go, right? So what I want you to be thinking about as it really works through it, one of the things that David pointed out, and I loved this part in the episode, was where do I start, right? And what he said was, take a look at your business and find the butter passing jobs. All right, I really got to find a better way to hold this thing so it doesn't look awful. But butter passing jobs, I was like, what the hell is a butter passing job? It is exactly what it sounds like, right? Hey, can you pass me the butter? So think about all the areas in your business where like it's just email responding, or it's taking this file from this floor to this floor, that room to that room. Like it's just this micro transactional thing that's going on in the business. Those are the things that are ripe for AI replication, AI execution, because it'll eliminate the human error and it'll give the people back the time to go do the things that are more meaningful than just passing the butter, right? You can use AI to look for patterns in your ticket data. You can use it to really like focus on empowering your team to handle those higher level, more complex, more meaningful pieces. The actual like pick up the phone and call the customer. I know that sounds foreign in 2025, but do it, right? And you can keep humans in the review loop too. So you don't have to like outsource all the trust or all the outcome or all the byproduct out to just the AI piece, right? Like keep the human in the loop. Everything's going to work out that way. So like figure that part out. Like what are my butter passing jobs in the business? Break that down to the SOP, and then figure out where you can introduce the AI to offload that work so that your people can do the super meaningful stuff, right? The stuff that requires human discernment, ultimately, is what his point was. So remember, the goal is not to remove humans from the equation whatsoever. Like there's a lot of fear porn out there about AI is going to replace people. And like, it's not really ultimately about replacing people. It replaces the work. It replaces the effort. It replaces the energy. It replaces a lot of the admin burden, but it doesn't replace people. At least today, it cannot replicate human discernment. And so use AI in such a way that its role is actually taking those routine tasks, right? Like free your team up to focus on what really matters most, using their expertise and their judgment to deliver exceptional service, something that will probably differentiate you, as shitty as that sounds, in today's reality as an MSP. Like delivering exceptional service consistently will grow your business, right? But the future of the MSP service delivery isn't just about the relationship or the interaction, choosing between human touch and automation. That part's inevitable. It's here already today. It's actually about finding that perfect balance between both of those things. So hopefully this was helpful. The takeaway is think through, where are my butter passing jobs? Do I have a process for that? Have I written it down? Can it be repeated by someone else? If so, great. I promise you there are one or more pieces of AI out there that can help streamline and strip the administrative burden off of that process of you and your people. And then from there, now I've got this time back, right? I have capacity back in the business. Where can I deploy the human capital where it really matters most as leverage to give me the outcome that we want as a business? Hopefully you've liked this version of taking something that was really a gold nugget out of one of these episodes and breaking it down into a transferable piece of communication and confirmation around the topic. Thank you again to David Powell for inspiring this particular one. And thank you for tuning in to a whiteboard session of MSP Insider. Get out there, find the butter passing jobs, and start replacing it so that you can do a better job for your people. Thank you.